or something like that, and he's got this, he thinks he's come up with something new, but it's actually something that's been gone over 10,000 times before, and the Lord tells him to do this, the Lord tells him to do that, and it was Lycona that had posted the tweet basically saying that I'm running from a debate challenge and all the rest of this stuff. So it is somewhat ironic that he would post that, but then say, I'm not going to listen to what he has to say about what I said. There really is a going on here. Dr. Lycon needs to be careful he doesn't trip over low-flying objects when his nose is so high up in the air. But I think I've debated many more Muslims than he has. And as far as I know, I have far more experience than he does in teaching both Greek and Hebrew. So whatever else there is, if I had gone out there and said, you know what, the Apostle Paul blew it on this, and someone came back who has at least as much experience as I do, if not more than I do, published, teaching, etc., and said, here's where you missed it, here's some fundamental epistemological issues and biblical issues and stuff like that to look at, I cannot imagine responding the way that he did. I can't begin to understand that. I would want to know what someone like that who has that kind of experience, even if I disagreed with them, I'd want to know what they had to say. But that's not how it works there. So it's sad, but there does seem to again. This is sort of what I experienced in seminary too. There are some in liberal institutions. People do not listen to what conservatives have to say because they don't believe that they have anything meaningful to add to the dialogue and discussion. In this case, you have an apologetic group that clearly does not believe that the Reformed folks have anything meaningful to add to the discussion, and so simply cannot be bothered with anything we might have to say. I leave it to the listening audience as to whether that is wise or not, and as to what that actually says. It says a lot to me, but we'll leave it at that. Someone in the audience asks, what is the mere Christianity model? I've mentioned it many times before, criticized it many times before. The idea that, just last week, William Lane Craig laid it out very clearly in the comments that we responded to from him, and that is a least common denominator, simplified, tiny target Christianity that is defined by the Trinity, the deity of Christ, the crucifixion, resurrection, period, end of discussion. No gospel, no ability to discuss what the gospel means, what the gospel demands. All that stuff is secondary. It's outside. Mere Christianity, Trinity, deity of Christ, death, burial, resurrection of Jesus. It's pretty much it. And everything else just takes lower positions of priority. And when you do that, functionally it makes it easier to do debates, because then you don't have to, you can just dismiss all sorts of questions that you find difficult or whatever. But that's not apostolic Christianity. That's not the Christianity of the New Testament. That's not the Christianity of the apostles. That's not what we're called to proclaim. It is minimalized beyond a biblical definition, and that is a problem, and it is unfortunately very, very popular out there. Now, I mentioned last week, whenever we, so it's been over a year. It was only May. When I was in the United Kingdom, huh? Man, that seemed like longer ago than that. Wow. I still remember really arcane facts of church history, but don't ask me what happened back in May. It's that short-term memory thing that sort of goes first. No, when you got so many things going on, you just can't keep track of them anymore. That's the problem. Anyway, all right. Alan Rule. Remember Alan Rule? He evidently, I am on his radar screen. He likes to take shots my direction. We've already talked about some of the silly things he's said in the past. But he decided to. He heard the commentary that I offered last week. If you may recall, I started off. He put an article up called "The Double Standards Seem Endless," and said that I'm at it again. Yesterday on the Dividing Line, he talked about the development of the Catholic priesthood. Most of you will recognize I talked about a whole lot more than that. I made reference to the priesthood. I made reference to the issue of the propitiatory nature of the sacrifice of the Mass. And what was I doing? I was responding to William Lane Craig and his comments on the subject of Roman Catholicism. So what I addressed, what everybody knows I addressed, was William Lane Craig and his views on Roman Catholicism. One of the many topics that I addressed was the development of the concept of the Roman Catholic doctrine of the priesthood. Now, what's interesting is Rule's article makes it very clear that he admits, yeah, the priesthood is something that developed over time. But I want to focus in upon that because it's extremely important for us to understand this. And it's extremely important for Christians to understand that once you accept the modern Roman Catholic doctrine of development, this is the funny thing is, once you embrace this, then really, as George Salmon pointed out in regards to Newman long ago, once you embrace the concept of development, you have abandoned the historical field of battle. Because once you embrace the idea of the acorn to the tree, then you actually don't even need to have an acorn any longer. Because the guide of the development of tradition becomes the magisterium, and hence the magisterium can tell you what history was and was not, what an early church father meant or what they didn't mean. Remember how many times in the debates with Jerry Matitix, remember when we first started debating Roman Catholics, they were beating up primarily on Calvary Chapel people because Calvary Chapel people are not church history people. There's a disconnect there. And they would be quoting this early church father and quoting that early church father. And you remember how frustrating it was for Jerry and the others when we